Chapter 6, page 54. I get to know what Willoughby had frightened and hurried to their room. Marianne was lying on her bed, snoring violently. Eleanor took her sister's hand, kissed her affectionately several times, and burst into tears herself. Marianne, as unable to speak, seemed to feel her sister's loving sympathy and silently gave her Willoughby's letter to read. My dear Mom, I have just had the honor of receiving your letter, for which I thank you. I am concerned to find there was anything in my behavior last night that you did not approve of, and I beg your forgiveness. I shall always remember my former visits to your family with the most grateful pleasure, but I hope I have never given anyone reason to think that I felt more for you than I ever expressed. You will accept that I could never have meant more when you understand that my affections have long been engaged, and it will not be many weeks before the lady and I are married. I obeyed your orders to return your letters, and the lack of heart which you so kindly offered me. Your obedient servant, John Willoughby. Eleanor was horrified. She had expected a confession, explanations, and reasons, but now expressed in a manner so far from every honorable and gentlemanly feeling. How could Willoughby have written a letter so cruel, so hurtful? It was a relief to her that Marianne had escaped any connection with such a man. She turned to her sister, who now felt able to speak. Poor Eleanor, how happily I make you! I only wish were anything I could do which might be of comfort to you. Oh, Eleanor, I'm so miserable, said Marianne, before her voice was completely lost in a passionate and bitter sobbing. Calm yourself, Marianne. Think of how much more you will have suffered if the discovery of his real character had come to the end of your engagement. Engagement! cried Marianne. There has been no engagement. He has not made or broken any promise to me. But he told you that he loved you. Yes. No. Never absolutely. He never said it in so many words, but every day I read it in his eyes. I felt myself as firmly engaged as if lawyers had written the agreement for us. Unfortunately, he said not feel the same. He did, Eleanor. For weeks and weeks he did. This look of hate which he says I offer him, he begged and begged me for it on his knees, and now, Eleanor was quite alarmed for her sister's health as the violence of her suffering grew, but she managed to persuade her to take some medicine to calm her restless pain of mind and body. Kind Mrs. Jennings showed real concern when she visited the patient. She had heard that Marianne's rival was a Miss Gray, a young woman with £50,000 a year, and that Willoughby had seriously overspent on his carriage and horses, and needed money urgently. Mrs. Jennings had no words enough to describe his behavior. She was sincerely sorry she had joked so often about Marianne's attachment, but with a return of her natural carefulness, hoped that it will be for the best, because now Marianne could marry Colonel Brandon after all. Chapter 7. The Truth About Willoughby. The next day, Marianne felt used as miserable and could talk about nothing but Willoughby. With affectionate words, Eleanor encouraged her to talk about her feelings. Marianne was determined to avoid Mrs. Jennings' presence, however. "She cannot feel, Eleanor," she cried. "Her kindness is not sympathy. She is only interested in me because she will enjoy telling her friends all the details of my sad situation. It is unfortunate that many people of excellent intelligence and character like Marianne are neither reasonable nor fair." Then something happened after breakfast which sank Mrs. Jennings still lower in Marianne's opinion. The sisters were in their room when Miss Jennings hurried in holding out a letter in her hand and with a careful smile on her face. "Now, my dear," she cried, "I bring you something that I am sure will do you good." At once Marianne imagined a letter from Willoughby, full of affection and believed explanations, instantly followed by Willoughby himself, who would throw himself passionately at her feet. The work of one moment was destroyed by the next. In front of her eyes was her mother's writing, never unwelcome till then, and in the bitterness of her disappointment, she felt she had reached the depths of her suffering. She could not speak, and the tears poured down her face. Mrs. Jennings was not at all aware of what she had done, and with many kind words of sympathy, she left the Miss Dashwoods to read the letter together. It brought them no comfort as I expected Mrs. Dashwood's complete confidence in and affection for Willoughby. Marianne's tears flowed even faster when she thought how shocked and saddened their mother would be to hear the news. She was now very eager to return home to Devonshire. Eleanor sat down with a heavy heart to write to her mother again, telling her how Willoughby had behaved and asking what they should do. Just then there was a knock on the front door, and Marianne, looking out of the window, saw Colonel Brandon outside. She hurried away to her room, and Eleanor remained to greet him. He seemed disturbed and unhappy, and asked anxiously after Marianne. I have come hoping to find you alone," he said in confusion, "because my only wish is to give comfort. No, not comfort, to support your sister in this difficult time, by feeling for her, for yourself, for your mother. Will you allow me to prove it by telling you some details of if I did not consider it useful, I will not bother you." He stopped. "I understand you," said Eleanor. "You have something to say about Mr. Willoughby that will open his character to us. Tell me will be the greatest proof of friendly feeling for Marianne. I beg you, let me hear immediately." "I must tell you a little about myself first. Perhaps you remember at Patton Park when I mentioned a young lady I once knew? She was very like your sister, with an airy mind, a warm heart, and great sensibility. She was a distant cousin of mine, and from our earliest days we played together and loved each other. But at 17 she was married against her wishes to my brother. Just before the wedding, she and I planned to return away and get married secretly. But my father discovered the plan and sent me away to join the army. It was an extremely unhappy marriage. My brother did not love or respect her, and spent his time on pleasures most unsuitable for a husband. She was very young, had no friends or family to advise her. I had been sent abroad by them, and my brothers, but explain, was always with her. I cannot describe the shock I received when I heard 2 years later of her divorce. He could not speak for a moment, and when he saw Eleanor's concern and sympathy, took her hand and kissed it gratefully. When I returned to England 3 years later, I began to search for her when she was no longer with her first seducer, the one for whom she had left her marriage. There was every reason to fear she had left him only to sink deeper into a life of dishonor. After 6 months, however, I did find her in debtors. Prison, she was so changed, so ill. She had only a short while to live, so I made sure she was properly looked after, and I was with her in her last moments. He stopped for a moment to control himself, then went on. With a firm mind and a pure marriage, she could have been everything you will live to see in your sister. She left to my care her little girl, Alicia, the child of her first seducer. I sent Alicia to school and then put her in the care of a very respectable woman living in the country. She is now 17. I imagine my horror when she suddenly disappeared a year ago. For 8 long months I searched and found nothing. You can imagine what I thought and felt and how I suffered. Good heavens! cried Eleanor. Could Willoughby? The first news of Alicia came in the letter I received at Barton. Back on the morning of our pleasant excursion to Whitwell. What was why I felt so suddenly? Willoughby did not know what I was called away to help someone he had made poor and miserable. But if he had known, would he have cried? No! He had done what no man of feeling would do. He had left the girl was innocent. He had succeeded. Left her with no home, no friends, and no money.